Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be making the parachute and dropship that I showed you. We'll be going into cloth simulation and generating the parachute. The dropship is available for free in a download in the link in the description down below. If you decide to make this yourself, then please share with me on Instagram. I love to see the work that you guys made. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell icon for further notifications on future videos I make. And now let's get started.
So we are back in a fresh Blender scene. For starters, we are going ahead and select everything with A and then X to delete. And now we want to append in the dropship, which is available for free in the link in the description down below. So let's go ahead and go into the right folder here. I've got the file over here. Let's click append. Now I'm going to go into the collection here. Select the dropship collection and hit import. And now it just got added to the scene. And all the materials are included as well. So that's easy enough. All right, so let's get back into solid view and start on our parachute now. First of all, let's add in a UV sphere. So Shift A to add in a new object and add in a UV sphere. Now let's go into the menu here and crank up these segments to 64. Now I'm going into local view with the / here. And I'm shading the UV sphere smooth. Now I want to go into edit mode, tap into face select, go into wireframe mode and select the bottom half of the faces and delete these. So hit X and choose faces. Okay. Well, this is the base mesh for our parachute, but let's work on it some more to get the result that we are looking for. Okay, so I hit numpad 7 to go into top view and I want to go into edge select here. And I want to select some of these edges to scale them in. So while holding Alt, I'm going to select this edge. Now I'm going to add in Shift here. So Shift Alt, and I'm going to select the edges here, alternating. So one excluded and one selected. And after we've done all of that, I want to scale these in. So go into top view still, and then hit S to scale them in and exclude the Z layer automatically. So let's scale them in slightly, something like this. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Okay, so keep these edges selected because now we want to bevel these. So let's hit Ctrl+B to bevel and hold Shift to make it a more precise bevel. Really small, something like this will do. Cool. And now I want to delete these faces, but don't delete the actual faces, but choose the option only faces because we want to leave the edges intact for the sewing option in the cloth modifier. Okay, so this is the base mesh. Now let's add in a modifier, in this case a subdivision surface, and crank it up to 2 levels, giving us a nice smooth effect. Okay, so back into edit mode now, and I want to select some vertices to extrude down. And in this case, I want to select all of the vertices on the bottom row in the inclines here. So I'm hitting C to go to circle select, making it easy to select all of these vertices. And after we've selected all of them, I'm going into front view with numpad 1 and then extruding these down with E. Doesn't really matter how far, just give them a bit like this. Now make sure to turn on auto merge vertices in the top right there. And now we want to scale these to 0. So S and then Shift Z to exclude the Z layer again and hit 0. And now they have been merged into one vertex. And we can add in a vertex group here. So go into the object data properties here and add in a vertex group. Let's call it something like pin and hit assign, making sure the weight is set to 1. Next, we want to add in the cloth simulation. So let's go into the physics properties tab here and choose the cloth simulation. Now we can skip all the values on the top part here. We just want to go into the pressure tab and crank up the pressure to 1, make sure it's checked on as well. And we want to go into the shape tab and select a pin group here. And now you can select the vertex group that we just made. So select the pin group pin here and make sure sewing is checked on. That's quite important. And now if we play the simulation, you will see that everything falls down. And we don't want that. That's because the gravity is still set to 1. So go into the field weights tab here and make sure gravity is set to 0. Now, it still won't work because the order of the modifiers is incorrect. And it should look like this for you. So subdivision on top, but we want the cloth modifier on top. So change that. And now if we play the simulation, you can see that this is working properly and we now get the cloth effect on our parachute, making it look more realistic. So I've hit spacebar to pause the animation and I want to apply the modifier. So in the modifiers tab, hover your mouse over the cloth modifier and hit Ctrl plus A. And this will apply the modifier, making it permanent. So now we can delete the vertex here. So I'll go back into edit mode and hit X to delete the vertex. And I want to select all of these vertices again. So the same ones we also used for the extrude before. So going into bottom view and selecting all of them. And let's go into the mesh menu here. Go into clean up and choose merge by distance. And then set a distance which will merge all of these double vertices into single vertices. And now we want to go ahead and extrude these down to create these strings for our parachute. So go into front view and then hit E and Z to snap them to the Z axis. And then move them down. I see there's something going wrong here. I don't see exactly what, but let's just delete this one vertex. Next, we want to scale these into 0 again. So S and then Shift Z, making sure the auto merge vertices is still checked on. Let's go into edge select now and select all of these edges that we just created. And then hit P to separate these. So P and then choose separate by selection, making it a separate object. And let's rename these. I'm going to rename the top part to shoot and the bottom part to strings. Now with the string object selected, let's go into the object menu and go into convert to and choose curve from mesh/text. And this will have turned all of these lines into curves. And now I can add curve geometry here. So going into the curve menu, into geometry, and giving them a bevel depth of 0.002. And now we have some very simple functional strings. Now let's add in another path because I want a straight string down as well. So I'm going to rotate it on the y-axis. So R, Y, 90. And I'm going to move it down with G, scale it on the z-axis, so with S and Z. And I'm going to move it up slightly, making sure it's connected to the other strings. Yeah, cool. And now let's give it the same bevel depth of 0.002. And that is it for the strings. Now, I still think it's a bit long, so I'm just going into edit mode here with tab and deleting the bottom two vertices. Okay, so next I want to work some more on the shoot here. So I'm tapping back into edit mode and I'm going to choose face select here, hit C to go into circle select and select all of these inner faces here. I'm going to delete those. And now I'm left with one circular line there. Just going ahead and selecting that one with the edge select and then deleting that as well. And while still in edit mode, I'm going to add in another UV sphere here. So adding it in with Shift A. Now I want to move it to the side and do that with a number you can remember. So GX and in my case 3. Because we want to move it back later on. And I want to select all the bottom faces here. So going into wireframe mode, into face select, and then selecting all of these. Yeah, deleting them with X and then choosing faces. And I'm going to move it back. So GX minus 3 in this case. And this will be the top part of our shoot. So going into the top view, into edit mode again, scaling it in ever so slightly, creating some kind of gap there. And then moving it down with G and Z and while holding Shift. Cool. Now I want to add in a edge loop here. So Control R and add in an edge loop. And I want to select all the middle faces here and then inset those with I. Now let's add in another edge loop here. So Control R. And one more on this face loop over here and pulling that in, creating a small gap there again. Selecting the face loop while holding Control. So select all of these faces here. Whoops. Yep. And then delete them. And now we have a few gaps giving us the fabric effect we're looking for. Now select these two edge loops here. And let's move them up slightly, giving us a more curved effect there. And don't forget to shade smooth. And this concludes all of the modeling for our parachute. So let's go out of local view and rename the objects here again. So renaming this to string here, and this to shoot strings. And I want to put them in their own collection. So select all of them, hit M, then choose new collection, and I'm calling it parachute. Okay, so let's move it up, making sure the string on the bottom is connected to the torus of the dropship there. And I want to scale it up. I'm going to scale it up by a factor of 2.5 because it was way too small for our dropship. I'm going to change the pivot point here to 3D cursor. And with the 3D cursor still on the 0 point there, I'm going to rotate it. So R, Y, and in this case, I want a -15. Now I'm going to move it back in here. So with G and X and G and Z, make sure it's connected again to the torus there. And I want to select all of the objects in the collection here. You can do that by right clicking on the collection and choosing select object. And I want to rotate them. So hit R and then Z and then rotate them by 90 in this case. This is the starting position for our parachute. And I'm going to rotate it once more. So R, Z, and then 120 because I want 3 parachutes to make a full circle. R, Z, 120. And this is our first parachute. Now let's add in a collection instance for the parachute, creating another parachute here, and then rotating it by 120 degrees again. So R, Z, 120. Then Shift D to duplicate the instance and do that once more. And now we have finished our complete spacecraft model. Next, let's work on our camera here. So let's add in a camera first of all. Shift A and then choose camera. Make sure it doesn't get added to one of the collections. We don't want that. And let's tap into camera view here. So hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. Then press N to open up the menu here. Going to the view tab and check on camera to view. Close the menu again with the N. And now we can zoom out with the scroll wheel and navigate like usual. And we want to put the dropship a bit on the right side. And now I want to rotate the camera. So hit R. And I'm just looking for the right angle here. Rotate it a bit more. And I think I'm going for something like this. This is looking pretty good. I just want to change the focal length. So changing that from 50 millimeters to 32 millimeters. And then scaling it back in a bit, zooming in, still rotating. And this is the angle I want. Now make sure to check off camera to view now so you can't ruin your camera angle anymore. Next up is the ocean. So I'm just going to add in a plane. So Shift A and then select a plane. And I'm going to move it down. So G, Z, and in my case, I want to move it down to -20. And I'm going to scale it up. And I still have the pivot point set to 3D cursor. So I'm changing that to bounding box center here. And I'm going to scale it up until it fills the entire camera here. That's fine. And I'm going to apply the scale. So Control A and then choose scale. I want to subdivide the plane. So tabbing into edit mode and then choosing subdivide. And going for 50 subdivisions here. No, that's not enough. Let's go for 100 subdivisions. Okay, so this is the base plane for the ocean. And now we can add in a displace modifier. Of course, we can also do this with the ocean modifier, but I'm just going for a quick and dirty solution here. So going into the displace modifier, adding in the texture here, changing it from image or movie to clouds, and leaving all the settings default. Make sure the plane is shaded smooth. And I'm going into the displace modifier and setting the strength to 0.5. And now I want to change some settings here, changing the render engine from Eevee to cycles, the device from CPU to GPU compute, samples to 256, and then checking on denoising. In my case, I can change it to optics, but this depends on your graphics card. So make sure to check that and use the right version for you. And I want the start sample to be 10 because I don't want to denoise too early in the render. Now I'm going to add in HDRI, so changing the world settings here from color to environment texture. And now we're going to render view, it's all pink, like always. And I'm going to open up an HDRI. In this case, I used an HDRI from HDRI Haven. I will put the link in the description. So I have it here. I'm going to add it And this is the lighting. I'm just going to change the strength, set it down to a zero 0.6 here. And now I want to work on some shading. So splitting the view here, adding a new window and changing the left part to the shader editor. And the right part I want on the rendered settings. And now let's work on our ocean shader. So let's add in a new material for the plane here. And I'm renaming it ocean. Okay. So with that done, let's work on the shading. Now, if you want to add things from quick favorites, it's super easy. You can, of course, add them with the search with Shift A, but you can also go into the add menu up top, then choose the nodes you want, right click them and add them to your quick favorites. And now if you press Q, you open up your quick favorites menu, you can choose one. And in this case, I have some here and I want to add in a color ramp and plug it into the base color. Now I want to add in two noise textures and plug those into each other and then plug them into the color ramp. And on the right side, you can see the result of what we're doing. Now let's change some of the noise parameters. I want the scale on the right one to be 10, the detail to be 16, and the roughness to be 0.2. And on the left noise node, let's go for a scale of 1, 16 on the detail as well, and a roughness of a 0.9. And that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to pull in the black value here and pull in the white value as well. Something like this will do, giving us the noisy result on the right side. I'm going to change the color. So change the white color to a pretty dark grayish bluish tint. And the black value can be the same color and then just make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, something like this will do. Giving us some contrast in the ocean. Now let's add in the mapping and texture coordinates node. If that doesn't work for you with Control T, then make sure in add-ons you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. And with that set up, we can change the texture coordinate from generated to UV. That won't change anything yet though, because we need to unwrap our face here. So let's go into top view for the plane here. Select all of the faces, then hit U and choose project from view bounds. And that's all we need to do for that one. And now the values look correct. And next up, we want to add in some bump here. So let's add in a color ramp again. Add in a noise texture. Plug it into the color ramp. Use the same mapping nodes here. Then look up a bump node and plug the color into height here. And then plug the normal into normal. And let's change some values here as well. So detail to 16 and the roughness to 8.7. Now I want to pull in the black and change the color from black to a fairly light gray. And now let's work on the roughness as well. So adding in another color ramp and two more noise textures. Plugging everything in again. And making sure to check the color ramp to roughness there. And now let's pull these in as well. And change some parameters on the noise textures again. Right side, scale 10, detail 16, and roughness 1. And on the left side, we can leave everything as default. Now, I want to rotate my HDRI a bit, so adding some nodes there as well with Control T, and then changing the Z rotation to -25, giving me a better light angle. I want a lot more contrast, so I'm going into render properties here and then going into color management on the bottom and changing it to very high contrast. And I also want to make the ocean darker, so I'm going to pull in the dark value a bit more and making the light value a bit darker. And I still want a bit more bump, so I'm putting the strength for the bump back up to 1. Now I want to work on the materials for the parachute next. So I've selected the parachute object, the shoot object only. I'm going to add in a material here, and I'm calling it shoot white. And let's work on that. I want a subsurface of a 0.8 because I want some light to pass through the fabric. And the subsurface will let me do that. Now I want to add some sheen because a fabric usually has some sheen, so a 0.8 there as well. And I'm going to increase the roughness to 0.8 as well. And I want some metallic here, so 0.2, giving us a glossy look, letting some light through, making it a realistic fabric. Now I've copied the node here, and I'm going to add in another material. Let's duplicate the white one, and then change the new material to shoot white 001, and change the name now to shoot orange because this is going to be the orange shoot. And I'm going to change the colors, and that's all I'm going to do, making sure the base color and the subsurface color are the same. And now I just need to add them to the proper faces here. So going into edit mode for the shoot again, selecting face select here. Okay, so select some face loops here. Let's select the outer one here. So shift alt and then click, and do that once more, and then circle select the most inner faces there. And now I want to select some of the faces on the outside as well, alternating again. So using C circle select to make my life a bit easier. And I'm just going to select all of these. And when we are done, we can hit assign and assign the material here. And now our parachute is looking like an actual proper parachute. Looking pretty cool. Okay, so let's merge these windows back. Okay, so this is all we will do in this tutorial. In my final render, I took the image into Photoshop and cranked up some more contrast, added some clouds in there, and made it a bit lighter on several parts. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to do that. But we want to go into compositing and add in a lens distortion node there and set the dispersion to 0.05. Now let's go into our render properties here, making sure these samples are set to 256. Very high contrast set on. Full HD is what we want. Choose a save location and make sure to choose the right file format. PNG will do for me. And we can render it out. Okay, so this brings us to the end result again. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you did, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot. If you want to learn more about the compositing that I did in Photoshop, then feel free to ask in the comments down below. I'd love to get back to you guys. If you decide to make this yourself, then please share with me on Instagram. It's really great to see what you guys made. See you in the next one.